Hello, namaste, welcome. I'm Ariana Pachati. This video, we are talking about the goal of yoga, the meaning of yoga, as well as the 8 limbs of yoga. So you do not need to have any previous knowledge of yoga teachings whatsoever. This is an amazing place to start because yoga is a lifestyle. Yoga is a lifelong practice that goes beyond, way beyond just poses, way beyond a yoga mat. And getting that out to regular society, people who don't just practice yoga, getting that basic knowledge out there is very important to understanding the yoga community, as well as incorporating so much awareness into your own life beyond just a movement. So let's start. So I always like to start my videos with a little oracle card pull. So just go ahead and close your eyes. Take a deep breath with me and just relax in general. So the card I pulled is from a Doreen Virtue deck, oracle card deck. Don't mind my missing fingernails. This one is singing and dancing. So express yourself and awaken your psychic senses through the magical power of music and movement. This has been something that's been a motive in my life, in my teachings, is movement is medicine. And what an amazing card for today's practice. Really feeling that awakening of the psychic senses, but also just the chi and the prana moving through your entire system through movement, but also understanding that it can go into deeper layers beyond just movement, etc. So starting at that place of physical movement is an amazing starting point. And then incorporating more knowledge and teachings as you go on with no pressure as to I need to learn it now. I need to be perfect at it now. I need to have all the yoga knowledge now. It's not going to happen. Okay, so let's first start with the meaning of yoga. I have some stuff that I want to read. It came out of the Yoga Sutras. If you haven't heard of that, these are ancient yoga texts and they have been translated. So they're sutras. They're kind of like when you read the Bible, there's verses. So you're like, oh, book 1, verse 32. You just say Sutra 32. So in these teachings, it goes deep into the 8 limbs of yoga, which I'm also going to go into in this video. This is something you can incorporate in your everyday life, whether you practice yoga poses on a yoga mat or not. If you are a regular dude that works on cars or whatever you do, and you don't even practice yoga, or you think you don't practice yoga, you can still practice the 8 limbs. So let's talk about the meaning of yoga. The meaning of yoga is the science of the mind. So the goal of yoga and the meaning of yoga are 2 different things, but the meaning of yoga is the science of the mind. And I want to read something from the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. Here's the book right here. Translated by Sri Swami Satchidananda, and I highly recommend this version of the sutras because it's very easy to understand in the world that you currently live in. So in the beginning of the book, when talking about the goal of yoga, the ultimate aim of Raja Yoga, which is what I study, as well as Hatha Yoga, which are totally interconnected, the ultimate aim of Raja Yoga is to bring about a thorough metamorphosis of the individual who practices it sincerely. Its goal is nothing less than the total transformation of a seemingly limited physical, mental, and emotional person into a fully illuminated, thoroughly harmonized, and perfected being. From an individual with likes and dislikes, pains and pleasures, successes and failures, to a stage of permanent peace, joy, and selfless dedication to the entire creation. Which brings it to the goal of yoga, which is actually the second sutra in the first book. So book 1, sutra number 2, the goal of yoga is introduced. And I'm going to translate it to English after. So the actual sentence is yoga sitas vritti nirodha. I think I butchered that last part. I'm in a Sanskrit course right now, so just be patient with me. Yoga sita vritti nirodha, which means the restraint of the modifications of the mind stuff is yoga. So the goal is the restraint of the modifications of the mind stuff. The mind stuff you can dive deeper into studying about in book 1 of the Yoga Sutras, but don't worry, I'm going to have a book club and record the whole thing on it. So that's going to be exciting for you. Before I go deeper into the 8 limbs of yoga, I'm going to just read off another couple of sutras, just so you can get a little bit deeper idea of what this book goes into. Another sutra, just the translation in English is, as you think, so you become. That was actually the translation version after, like they translated it into an English sentence and then they go deeper into each one. It has paragraphs, sometimes pages. So that was in there. And then another one is, yoga is like an obstacle course. Many obstructions are purposely put on the way for us to pass through. So oftentimes we begin to go on a spiritual journey or learn something new or dive deeper into understanding ourselves and life. And we seem to notice or have more awareness of maybe speed bumps or hiccups along the way. And we start to get frustrated because we think we're living our lives in such a higher vibrational state, and don't we deserve to only have higher vibrational things? Why are these lower vibrational things happening? And we forget that it's really the practice of yoga and understanding that those are just impressions in the mind, that's part of the mind stuff, is getting attached to that kind of thought pattern. Oh, I deserve that. That's that attachment. So studying yoga goes a lot deeper into just, oh, I'm a spiritual being and I have a high vibrational life. This is sometimes uncomfortable, but also a path of self-realization. So another one is by cultivating attitudes of friendliness. This is the one sutra, if you never read any other sutras, this is the one sutra that you can take with you for the rest of your life, and it will benefit you greatly. So listen up here, ladies and gents. By cultivating attitudes of friendliness towards the happy, compassion for the unhappy, delight in the virtuous, disregard toward the wicked, the mind stuff retains its undisturbed calmness. And if that right there is the goal, the restraint of the modifications of the mind stuff is yoga, then one would never even have to step on the yoga mat to reach that understanding. Now, we do step on the yoga mat for other energetic balancing things as well, but it all ties into oneness, all ties in together. Do I want to read any more of these quotes, or do I want to go on to the 8 limbs? Yeah, well, this one is from a different book called The Complete Illustrated Book of Yoga, which I love. I teach within my yoga teacher trainings. Sorry, that was my dishwasher in the background. The Complete Illustrated Book of Yoga, this quote from there says, if you want to reach deeper understanding is the yoga lifestyle, 8 limbs, you must develop and unfold through service, devotion, and a moral life, which is part of studying yoga. Okay, so let's go into the 8 limbs. What are the 8 limbs? Well, yoga asana, when you're on your yoga mat and you go to yoga class, that's only one limb of the 8 limbs of yoga. The 8 limbs of yoga come from Patanjali's studying and his teachings, and it encompasses the teachings of Raja Yoga, which like I mentioned before, is interconnected with Hatha Yoga. And many people get very confused with the studies of different types of yoga, and it really is all just one giant umbrella that has ventured off into different areas, right? So then when you're following Raja Yoga, which translates to the royal path, you're encompassing devotion, you're encompassing karma, you're including movement and breath work, you're including all these other things. And that's why we're going to go into it now. And that's why it's called the royal path, because it encompasses all of these different parts, and every single part is equally balanced. You can think of it as a circle or a flower and these petals to this flower, and you can't just have one. If you're missing one, then the whole thing is like, kind of not a completed flower, a completed circle. And so yoga poses, that's great, but what we're missing in this world is the understanding of all these other parts. Okay. So there are 8 limbs. I'm going to list them off and then we're going to go into them deeper. I will, wherever I upload this video, because I'm going to upload it multiple places, I will take a picture of this. It comes out of one of the books that I use for my teachings, and I'll cite that and I'll give you this page so you can easily reference back. 8 limbs. The first one is Yama. The second is Niyama. The third is Asana. The fourth is Pranayama. The fifth is Pratyahara. The sixth is Dharana. The 7 is Dhyana. And the 8 is Samadhi. Samadhi, I want to make a whole entire separate video just on that teaching alone. Let's go into the first limb, which is Yama. Now, I mentioned the first 2 limbs, Yama and Niyama. They kind of sound the same. The second one has the ni in front of it, and N-I, Niyama. Each of those has 5 parts to them. So they're kind of lengthy to listen to, so just be patient. But understand that when I'm done with those 2, the others are very quick to, glance over and give you a basic few sentences. So stick around. The first part of Yama, remember there's 5 parts to it, is Ahimsa. Ahimsa is nonviolence. So practicing nonviolence in your life, internally, externally, your choices in food. A lot of yoga teacher trainings, this is exactly when they bring up diet. This is exactly when they say you need to have a vegetarian or vegan diet. I am not going to say that to you. I don't follow that. I follow my own life and wherever the wind takes me, and it doesn't matter. You choose that for yourself. You choose your diet, but if you do consume meats, because I'm not a dietitian or a nutritionist, so I really can't sit here and say that. I like to follow Ayur-Vive, okay? That's just my recommendation. That's it. When you choose meats, if you do eat meat or animal products, you start to be more conscious about what you choose. You choose the ones that are being treated properly and fed properly and not injected with all of these steroids and eating these disgusting foods and treated like horrible and are overpopulated and crowded. So making sure that they are coming from a very, safe place. How are they being slaughtered? Who are the owners, etc. If you're getting your milk, is it grass-fed, coming from grass-fed cows? And your eggs, there's plenty of local people you can get your eggs from, and starting to make those conscious efforts. And you don't have to be perfect. It's a lifelong practice, remember. So don't be like, I'm failing. That's not possible. Just practice it. This is part of yoga. So that's Ahimsa, that's nonviolence. Obviously, we can go way deeper into each of these, and that's what we do in our yoga teacher training. We go way deeper into these. The next one is Satya, which is truthfulness. Okay, so being truthful, not just when you're like telling the truth, like not just doing the opposite of a lie, but being truthful within your expression, being truthful with yourself. What are you posting on social media? What are you listening to? Are these truths coming into you, etc.? And just really adding truthfulness into your workspace. Do you put on another mask and change into a completely different person when you go into your workspace? And how can you start to balance out all these different roles that you play into a common frequency that you still feel connected with, so you don't have to make these drastic changes in your life? So all of these different places you can examine for truthfulness. It's not limited. The next part of Yama is Asteya, so non-stealing. Non-stealing, obviously you're not going to walk into the store and start stealing things. Don't do that. Not cool, but also not stealing ideas, citing sources. I've done so many teachings on this, but I'm kind of just drawing a blank at this point. There's a lot of different ways you can practice non-stealing. I'm just trying to think of more. Hold on. Non-stealing resources. If you have knowledge, and you know it can help someone, don't steal that. Don't hold on to that. That's also another part of a teaching, but not stealing that information from other people, not withholding that information from other people. So any other ways you can think of that, we can dive into that deeper. The next one is an interesting one, and it's an important one. It's part of the yamas. The next fourth one is called Brahmacharya. I don't know if you've ever heard of Brahmacharyans, but you may have heard of people that are Brahmacharyans completely abstain from sex completely. And that may be true. Yeah, for some. But that's not what it's talking about here. This is the conservation of energy. So purposefully placing your energy and understanding that when we're talking about Brahmacharyans, we're talking about this energy, we're talking about the study of creative energy, which is like your sexual energy, right? It is not like, oh no, sexual energy. It's like, oh, this is what births life. This is what births ideas, and everybody can birth this creative fire. Anyways, are you giving your energy away to, porn and masturbating 4 times a day, but not birthing ideas from it? Like, it's not like feeding your soul in any way. It's not intentional. Or are you just giving it away and feeling drained? Because there's a way to go about it where it's a freaking practice and it's healing. But if we don't bring that awareness to it and we let it be low vibrational and depleting and draining and emptying, then we're not practicing Brahmacharya. We're not practicing the conservation of energy. We're not intentionally placing our energy places. And we can do that beyond just our sexual energy. Any type of creative energy or beyond. Placing your intention somewhere. Right? When you go on autopilot and you like say something, your kids are saying whatever and you respond whatever because you're on autopilot and you're drained and you're not intentional with that placement of energy. Then you start to feel guilty after your response because it didn't match with what you really truly feel when you have that level of awareness, right? So it's not about beating yourself up. It's about a lifelong practice and journaling about these things and understanding you're not going to practice all of these just overnight, okay? This is a years and years of cultivation, and don't be afraid by that either. This is your playground. Earth is here as your playground. Be a student for the rest of your life because it'll spark interest in creative expressions and ideas. Whoa, shining in my eyes. The 5th yama is aparigraha, which is non-grasping, but the term I like better is non-possessiveness. Really not grasping onto ideas. This goes beyond just relationships or physical, items, coffee. This is like ideas and frustrations, as well as, kind of an act of non-greediness as far as like going back to not withholding information as well, and like sharing gifts with others. So really non-possessiveness, your ideas, right? I created this idea and nobody is going to steal it from me. And if they do, I'm going to rip them apart about it. Is that what we're here to do? Are we here to build communities and build people up? Isn't that what we're meant here to do? Not be queen of the castle. Here's your crown and everybody bow down. Non-possessiveness. That is a huge practice of yoga. I mean, especially if, I am a Sun, Moon, Mercury, Leo. I love the royalty. I love the crown on my head. That's why I step into the teacher position, because it feeds that, but I'm also practicing aparigraha, non-possessiveness, and I'm teaching these teachings that are so beneficial and healing for me and for others. So now let's move into the niyamas. So that were all 5 yamas. Now let's do niyamas. Kind of like these internal observances. And yamas and niyamas are very much like what you're doing on the inside and what you're doing on the outside. And they both can kind of be like, when you're studying each part of it, they can kind of be interconnected. So the first niyama is called Saocha, and that means purity. So purity of the mind, purity of the body, purity of your space, like cleanliness per se, like your home. When your home is clean, do you feel less anxious and more open and creative to express yourself, work, or even just relax. I do. And purity of the mind. If I'm not waking up and I'm not staying within routine, not that I have to be militant, it's taking me a long time to kind of figure out the balance within that, but keeping myself a clear channel by all of the practices that I do based on how I feel or whatever it is that day. That sense of purity is so deep and so healing for me personally. And I'm able to handle life's tasks easily. I'm able to get on my yoga mat even though I'm tired. I'm able to do and think and be creative and not have that stare at a wall and be so drawn out and empty because the world drained my energy. I'm able to have my energy system flowing constantly. And even though I'm giving out energy, it's replenishing constantly. There's no blockages and it's getting stuck, right? I mean, sometimes like right now my neck hurts and I got to work on my back and my neck a little bit. I'm always working on something. Healing never stops. Even the great swamis and gurus of the world. Don't let anybody fool you. We're human beings. We experience different things, and that's why we practice. If you were perfect, they wouldn't be practicing. They wouldn't be teaching you. So you always just keep that open mind that, nobody's no better. No matter what they're teaching, they're no better. And some things are going to be helpful for you, and some things you're not going to resonate with, and that's cool. Anyways, the second niyama is Santosha. Sometimes they say Samtosha with an M, or sometimes they say Santosha with an N. Pam or Pan, whatever. Which also translates to contentment. Are you content? Are you complaining about not having enough? Your house isn't good enough. It's not going the way you want it. Your dreams aren't coming true. Spirit isn't giving you what you want. Are you content? Because that can be a practice just like gratitude is a practice. Just like loving kindness is a practice. Oh, I don't feel grateful. Well, did you sit down and intentionally practice gratitude? Oh, I don't feel grateful when I think about it. Well, keep practicing. Keep practicing. And see what happens when you resist yourself and when you fight and what you complain about. Notice the words that you say when you complain. You don't have to shame yourself. We all do it. But notice the words that you say, because those words are a frequency and they will lead you into the direction of discovering what's underneath, what's in the subconscious, quote unquote. So anyways, moving on to the third niyama, which is tapas. Tapas, spiritual discipline. Ooh, not just spiritual discipline, but like discipline in itself. Okay. So especially since we live in this Western culture, especially technology, maybe you're working from home now, maybe your schedule's totally different. Things are different every day. Maybe your schedule's different every day. What is your type of discipline? And our idea in America, oh, discipline, my parents disciplined me, and so we need to be free and butterflies, and we can change the way we think about the word discipline. Give it a new vibration. Give it a new perspective, because discipline is so medicinal. Having discipline. I'm a pretty disciplined person. Did that come from some deep childhood disciplining? And possibly a lot of trauma? Possibly, yes. But I worked through that and found that these core parts needed to stay in a healthy way. So spiritual discipline for me is constantly seeking, not even just seeking, but trying to feel and express light in finding the light and seeing the darkness and seeing the light, and just yoga in itself, which means to yoke and kind of like this connected union oneness. I know it's an odd, way to say it, but in my way of spiritual connection, words don't even really exist. They're really just like thought patterns and waveforms that can be translated. And so that's kind of how it is for me. Words have never been, when I like connect with whatever I do, words are very hard for me to like connect with, which is funny because I have always had a kind of like this issue with speech growing up. I digress. Anyways, I went to reading classes and speed reading classes to try to help me. And I had this weird, like speech impediment, and I had like braces for like 5,000 years, but seriously like 7 years, with a whole bunch of other stuff in my mouth for years before that. And like I didn't speak right, and it was very hard. And so Like thought patterns and waveforms are way more my jam. And when I was pregnant with my son, before he was born, I was tuning into him and I like meditated on what he looked like. I saw like the 19 or 20-year-old version of him, which is insane what I saw. Oh my gosh. But like we communicated, but we didn't talk, and it was the craziest experience. So spiritual discipline looks different for everyone. See, there's so many different layers to these things. The fourth niyama is svadhyaya, which is one of my favorites. I know I shouldn't pick favorites, but it's one of my favorites. It's self-study. I've been doing this a lot lately. A good yoga pose for self-study is shoulder stand and holding it for up to 5 minutes. I learn a lot about myself when I hold yoga poses. I learn a lot about my mind, because if you start to watch your mind, see where it goes, see where it takes you, the quality of the word choices and exactly where it goes. Self-study in so many different ways beyond just yoga. Your responses, your reactions, without criticizing yourself. It's okay to be upset and have an emotional reaction if you responded some way and let the emotions come out, but to sit there in your mind stuff for days after, dwelling and dwelling and dwelling, fill up your mind with something else. One time I was so grumpy and I yelled at my son and he like cried and he was like, "You yelled at me." Like he was so upset, and I was like, "I'm so sorry. I think mommy needs a 10-minute timeout." And I was like, "I'm going to go do a 10-minute breathing." And he was like, "Yeah. Okay." And I know whatever, if you're like, "Oh God, she said the word timeout," like whatever, shoot the messenger. Take it up with your therapist. But seriously, I, recognized that within myself, used my yoga practice, didn't hide it, shared that with him. Self-study. The fifth part of niyama is Ishvara Pradadhana, and this is surrender to the divine. However that is for you, you don't have to have a God per se. It can be, technically speaking, if you believe in I, then you believe in God. But anyways, surrender to the divine, surrender to creativeness, to energy, to your force field, to nature, whatever it is, Mother Earth. Surrender to the divine. And then the other limbs of yoga, let's scan through these. So those were the first 2 limbs. I told you the other ones are going to be much faster. The third limb, and again, I'm giving them to you linear, but they are a circle, okay? So you need to have all of them, not like need, but like you have all of them, and now you have this circle. The third limb is asana, not asana. We're not going into asana. All of the A's sound the same. Asana, not asana, asana. The A's are the same. Asana. And those are poses. Those are the movements, right? That's what you go to a yoga class. You're practicing that limb, okay? Pranayama. You might be also practicing pranayama. If you come to my classes, you're usually practicing pranayama as well. Pranayama is the fourth limb of yoga, and that's breath work. So there's yama, niyama, asana, pranayama. Got 4. The fifth is pratyahara, which is withdrawing from the senses, which is not to be confused with shavasana, you may experience that during shavasana, right? Shavasana is a pose. It's a pose. So you can study the pose in itself. But withdrawing from the senses is the practice of pratyahara. And that is a really amazing practice. It's something that if you study it, that's great, but you will be more illuminated when you practice. So practice with me. I think I have some videos up on my video library. If not, I'm doing this whole 8-limb series as a part of the Discover Your Medicine workshop and teaching. So withdrawing from the senses, look out for that practice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sixth limb is dharana, which is concentration. The 6th limb is dharana. The 7th limb is dhyana. The 6th limb is dharana, which is concentration. The 7th limb is dhyana, which is meditation. 2 separate limbs. So concentration, retraining the attention of the mind. So you have this card. Focus on this card. Oh, maybe your mind wandered off to your grocery list for a second. Bring it back to this card. Is that meditation? Is that dhyana or is that dharana? This is concentration. You're retraining the attention of the mind for the concentration, and then the meditation is kind of like that result, right? And meditation isn't something that you do for 20 minutes and say, oh, I practiced meditation. We say, like, a lot of people will still say that to kind of spark the interest of the Western mindset, but or just to kind of make it relatable or kind of understood on their level, but they're two separate limbs. And so you can practice that retraining, practice that retraining, practice that retraining. Also keep that with you throughout the day and understand and experience this deep state of meditation. And when we study Samadhi, so the 8th limb, it goes dharana, dhyana, Samadhi. Samadhi is spiritual union or ultimate bliss. And so it's not like it goes in levels per se, like in a linear fashion per se, but we can study it like that. And when we uncover each part of the practices, we realize Samadhi isn't a state that you can live in forever. You came here to live in this world. So living in Samadhi, that is not realistic. Experience Samadhi is. Experiencing all of the limbs of yoga, that's realistic. That's attainable. And it is a beautiful lifelong process that everybody can practice. I don't care if you're flexible or not. Everybody can practice this. And if you've ever been to, therapy or maybe AA, and you've practiced maybe the 12 steps of recovery in any sense, or a process of uncovering layers of yourself, how you view yourself in the outside world, you'll notice that it's kind of similar. It's kind of like this process, but it includes more energetic and spiritual limbs to it. So it's a lifelong process. It's not something you go in a linear fashion, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. And then now you're step 12, congratulations, now help someone else through it and keep going through it. I mean, they can keep doing that forever too. These just have these just have more. This just has more layers of understanding, deeper techniques, and ancient wisdom to go along with it, which in itself is very medicinal. So I hope that this helped you understand the 8 limbs of yoga. How can you practice the 8 limbs of yoga in your life? And how can you cultivate this level of awareness on each limb? So when you're on the yoga mat, maybe you start to do a little bit more pranayama before you move your body. Maybe even just at the gym if you work out, or maybe you're picking up your kids and that's, you putting them to bed and you're like, this is my workout. Maybe you practice your pranayama then and you start to look at that movement of picking them up and putting them down. This is all yoga for you. And you start to change your perspective on your own life, because our mindset is so powerful that if a placebo pill, a sugar pill in your mind can change a sugar pill into curing cancer, what can it do for the rest of your life? What can it do for your practice? Starting to look at things differently. Practicing yoga to yoke union. Thank you so much for listening and watching. If this is on Spotify and the video library and YouTube, then go ahead and drop your comments, the like button, subscribe. If it's on my website, then go ahead and drop your email address. I appreciate you all. I really want to get more people into understanding this. Even if they don't want to practice back bends and things like that. This has changed my life forever. I know it can change the lives of others too. And I can help people find that reach for their own practice. I really appreciate you listening and watching. I love you. I wish you peace and love. I would prayer hands namaste you out, but I'm holding a microphone, so namaste.